Hi, everyone. Today I will be going over date rape. It's very important that you have a pretty good understanding on this topic, so go ahead and bear with me. I would prefer to give this lecture in person, but that's okay. So in class, I would read the article to everyone. However, unfortunately, you are getting this lesson online, so you are going to read the article yourself and respond to the question. So on the calendar, you can see it says, do this assignment on Canvas. I want you to do that first before we continue on with this lecture. So please go ahead and do that. I think the biggest question from that assignment was the last question that says, do you think that this was an example of rape? Was there consent? Why or why not? In class, I have multiple people who say this is not an example of rape. Like they knew she knew what was happening and blah, blah, blah. However, she never consented. She never said, yes, I do want to engage in intercourse. So it is an example of rape because if there is not a verbal yes said, there is not consent. Obviously, there's nonverbal things that happen in today's day and age. However, it is always required that there is that verbal consent there, realistically. So just kind of clearing that up. Like, yes, this was an example of rape. She told him multiple times she didn't want to engage in intercourse, and he didn't listen. So what is date rape? Date rape is sexual intercourse that is forced on a victim by someone they know. So a lot of people assume that rape is happening like by strangers in random alleyways and stuff like that, and that is not always the case. I do want to talk about the Indiana law on rape. It's a person who has sexual intercourse with another person or causes them to submit to other acts when they're compelled by force, when they're unaware that the intercourse is happening, or they're so mentally disabled they are not able to give consent. Another thing that comes into play here is the age. Actually, people that are 14 and under cannot consent to any sexual activity. That is the law in Indiana, which just is kind of entertaining, right? Because we have a lot of people that are engaging in intercourse at a younger age. And so people are not able to consent and they're still choosing to engage in intercourse. Another thing is people who are age 14 to 16, they can have sexual contact with each other, even though you cannot consent if you're within that 14 to 16 age range. They do have these Romeo and Juliet laws that kind of protect you from engaging in intercourse, even when you're not old enough to consent, as long as it's with each other. Now, if you're 16 and you're having contact with someone who's over 18, first things first, the person that's 18 needs to know that the person is 16 years of age. If you have been married, that obviously clears things there. But the biggest thing that you should know is that the parties cannot be more than 4 years apart. So if I'm 16 and I'm trying to consent to intercourse, there needs to be that 4 age gap that is there. So just know of that 4 age gap that is available. So if drugs are used during this, what are the top 3 most common? We have Rohypnol. This is also known as roofies. This is very important that you know about this drug because it's the most common. This is actually a sleeping pill. It's prescribed for insomnia. Insomnia is when you can't sleep at night. It hasn't been approved by the FDA. However, it still does get distributed. Basically, it'll give your body a paralyzed feeling. That'll start 20 to 30 minutes after taking the drug, and it'll peak at about 2 to 3 hours. It can actually last 8 to 12 hours. People will put that in your drink. Next one is GHB. This gives you an incapacitated feeling where you can't control your body. And this obviously puts you at a higher risk for sexual assault because if you cannot move your body, you cannot defend yourself in any way. And then the last one is ketamine. This is not as common. It's amazing to me that people even get a handle on these drugs because it's used for starting and maintaining anesthesia. So when people put you to sleep, when you get your wisdom teeth out, that's actually the drug that they're using. So how can you protect yourself? A lot of these you're going to notice have to do with getting your own drink. So this says get your own drink. If you're at a party, get your own drink so somebody doesn't put something in your drink that will give you an incapacitated feeling. Don't share drinks. This is important because somebody can pretend that they're drinking, but really they're just making you feel comfortable so that you'll drink out of their drink. Keep your drink with you at all times. The rule is if you leave your drink, you are no longer going to drink that drink. And then if it tastes strange, throw it away. I always tell this story of when I was on New Year's, like in high school. I didn't drink, but like some of my friends were drinking. And I found it really annoying when people drink because they just act drunk. And so I was like, I don't care if you drink as long as you make me mac and cheese. And so they did. And when I was eating my mac and cheese, it tasted really weird. And I was like, what is going on? And come to find out, like, I didn't eat the mac and cheese, but like a year or two later, this girl that was at that party told me that she put alcohol in my mac and cheese because she didn't like me. So it tasted weird, so I threw it away. Just kind of trust your instincts when it comes to things like that. Be aware of sudden changes in how your body feels. If you start to feel like something's off and it's not a familiar feeling, get to a safe place with a safe person. Stay with your friends that you trust. Don't go to a secluded area like a bedroom where someone could take advantage of you. And then, like I said, that gut feeling you get, those instincts that you feel, be aware of that. So what can you do if you need to get help? There is an iPhone feature on your phone. If you push the lock button 5 times, if you don't have a home button, if you have a home button, if you don't have a home button, you hold the power up and the lock button at the same time. It's like how you power off your phone, and it's going to pull up an emergency SOS. You can actually slide that and it will call emergency services. Along with that, if you have any emergency contacts set up, it will notify them as well. So this is just a little true or false activity. Most people are likely to be raped by someone they know, not strangers. So true or false? The answer is true. Only around 10% of rapes are committed by strangers. 90% of rapes are committed by someone the victim actually knows. People can be raped at home, work, in places they felt safe. Rapists can be friends, colleagues, clients, neighbors, family members, partners, exes, etc. Next question. People who are sexually abused as children are likely to become abusers themselves. Most people will say true. The answer is false. This is a dangerous myth because it's trying to excuse the behavior. It's like, oh, well, it happened to them, so it's just like known that it's going to happen. They're going to do it to other people, which is not true. Usually people who were abused as children will most likely not inflict the same pain on others. If you have previously had sex with someone, it is not possible to be raped by them. True or false? False. You could be in a healthy relationship. You could have slept with your partner hundreds of times. And if there is a moment that you do not want to engage in intercourse with them and they want to and they're forcing you to, they are raping you because there was not consent to have intercourse. No means no, no matter the circumstances. It should be given and received every time you engage in activity. I feel like a lot of times we engage in intercourse and we don't really stop to think like, oh, are they okay with this? Like we just assume. And so it's actually very important that you're having those check-ins and being sure that it's what both partners want each time. It can still be rape even if you do not get hurt or fight back. The answer is true. It doesn't matter if you fight back, scream, whatever. If there was no yes given, technically it could be considered rape. Now, there's a difference between you saying yes, okay, and like that consent being given and things like that. You just need to be aware, like there has to be a yes. We get in these instincts where we're just kind of doing our thing and we're in foreplay and we don't really think about it. We're like, oh, it's fine. You need to check in. Also during rape, a lot of people are not able to move or speak because they're in fear or shock. They think, oh, I'll do all these things, but then you don't when you're in that situation. Also, you might be in a coercive or a controlling relationship or too young to give consent or unable to consent because of drugs or alcohol. Next question. Once a man is sexually aroused, he cannot control himself. He must have sex. Usually during this time, a lot of the guys start giggling and they're like, ah, it's so funny. But it's not funny because, yes, it's frustrating. And yes, you want to get that thing over with. However, if that person does not want to engage in activity, they do not have to. Men can control their urges just like women. No one needs to rape someone for sexual satisfaction. Usually, if you're in a good relationship, you guys will be able to please each other in other ways if intercourse is not something that you're both down for at the moment. So if you're wondering why my phone's been going off 30 times, that's because every 98 seconds in America, someone is sexually assaulted. So just while I've been giving this lecture, 4 times my phone has probably went off. That's just showing you like how often and how frequently this truly happens. I like this. This was a display that was done at a college. It's called What Were You Wearing? Where people literally put up like things of what they were wearing, and then they explained what happened to them. This says, it was February, so I was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and jeans. We were drinking, and the friend who hosted the party told me I needed to stay over because I was too drunk to drive. The next day, I woke up in his bed with no pants on. So you can see here, it says, the friend told her, you don't need to drive home. Like, it's not safe. Like, just stay here. And then she wakes up and she was taken advantage of. So it just shows you like, oh, you think you can trust people, but there are circumstances where things happen where you don't expect it to. A university t-shirt and cargos. It's funny. No one's ever asked me that before. They asked me if being raped means I'm gay or if I fought back or how I could let this happen to me, but they've never asked about my clothes. So you can see there kind of how that's happening. So the interesting thing about this is it says they asked if I'm gay or if I fought back. And I feel like in society we have this assumption that guys cannot be raped, but guys have the right to deny sex just as women can. Just because they might be stronger in some circumstances to fight back, like we talked about, you do get that incapacitated feeling sometimes whenever you're in shock. What were you wearing? A sundress. Months later, my mother would stand in front of my closet and complain about how I never wore any of my dresses anymore. I was 6 years old. So you can see here this circumstance is talking about child abuse. What were you wearing? A swimsuit. We had been canoeing at the river all day. It was a really fun time. Then they came into my tent when I was trying to change clothes. There's something that should stand out to you from this story, and it says, then they came into my tent, which means she was not only taken advantage of by one person, but by more than one person. And so she was probably with her friends that she was with. So it just shows you that this can happen to anyone. This kind of sums up what that gallery walk is trying to say. Rape is caused by, it's not caused by short skirts or flirting or being drunk. It's caused by people that are rapists and do not choose to ask to initiate activity. So in class, we would do these date rape scenarios. You would browse around the room, read the scenarios, and say whether or not consent was given. I was going to give this to you as your assignment, but I think that it would be too hard to navigate back and forth. So as I read them, you are just going to think of the answers in your head, and then I'll make sure that you understand them. So this will take a little, probably like another 5 to 10 minutes, but this is very important. So please stick around, speed up my voice if I'm talking too slow. Rachel and Miguel have been dating for a year. They haven't had sex yet or done anything more than kissing and holding hands. They're happy and they're in love. They have talked about having sex before, and they have decided that they wanted to wait until they were both at least 16, which they have both been for about a month now. Rachel decided not to start taking birth control yet. She talked to Miguel, and they agreed that Miguel would start carrying condoms with him in case they felt the time was right. They didn't want to plan the first time. They just wanted to go with the flow. One day they were at Miguel's house alone. They started making out and things were heating up. They both had their shirts off and were starting to touch each other's genitals when Miguel asked if he should get up and get his condoms. Rachel smiled and said yes. So this is a red, yellow, or green. Do I have the green light? Yes, we can have intercourse. Do I have the yellow light? A conversation needs to happen. Or is this a red light? Something is present here that informs there is no consent. So think red, yellow, or green. The answer is green. How do we know? In the story, they've talked about having sex before, and Rachel smiled and said yes. She gave him verbal consent that yes, intercourse is okay. So if it's red or yellow, what should happen next? We don't have to need to answer this because it is green. Sam and Ryan meet at a party. They go to a bedroom for privacy and start to make out. Sam doesn't know what Ryan wants to do, but doesn't want to risk Ryan saying no. So Sam just starts to unzip Ryan's pants and reaches their hand inside. Is this red, yellow, or green? Green mean yes, yellow meaning conversation needs to happen, red, something is absolutely wrong here. I've said yellow. How I know is because Sam says he doesn't know what Ryan wants to do, but he doesn't want to risk him saying no. You could even put this in the red category because he's intentionally not asking because he doesn't want to be told no. If it's red or yellow, what should happen next? Sam needs to talk to Ryan about the sexual encounter and be sure that he is okay with what is going on. And so in this situation, they have that conversation. Boom, easy, consent is given. Next, Jimmy and Rose started dating a few months ago. They've made out and have touched each other's genitals while keeping their clothes on. They had a conversation over text about being ready to go further. Rose asked if Jimmy was ready for sex. Jimmy told Rose that he was nervous, but he was ready to give it a try. The couple agreed that the next time they were making out, they would take things further. Is this red, yellow, or green? Green, yes. Yellow, conversation needs to happen. Or red, this needs to stop immediately. This might surprise you. I guarantee some of you say green, but it's actually yellow, and here's why. The couple agreed the next time they were making out, they would take things further. You cannot plan consent in advance. Just because you want to do it doesn't mean when you're in that moment, you will want to do it. So you can't say, oh yeah, next time we're making out for sure, let's do it. Because in that situation, you might feel differently. And so even though they had agreed to it, there still needs to be a conversation during their makeout session. So that's why I said what should happen next. During the makeout session, they need to have verbal consent to be sure they still want this to happen. Okay. Julie is in grade 12 and is really popular. She's dated and had sex with a few people. Parker is in grade 9, new to the school, and wants to make new friends. He starts to hang out with the older guys from drama and gets invited to a few parties. He has a crush on Julie and recently added her on Snap. One night, Parker starts to talk with Julie. Julie has been drinking and figures that if Parker is flirting, then he's cool to hook up. Julie takes Parker into a bedroom, starts to kiss him, and puts his hand on her genitals. Red, yellow, or green? This is a red situation, and here's why. Grade 12 and grade 9, technically there's a 4-year gap, which is fine, I guess, but you need to be careful with the age difference there. Julie had been drinking. If you are drinking alcohol, you cannot consent. And so if you're at a party and you're drinking alcohol, and yes, you both said yes, even though you both said yes verbally, it doesn't matter because alcohol cancels out consent given. She figures that if he's flirting, he's cool to hook up. There was no conversation. She's just assuming. And if you see here, it says that she put his hand on her genitals. So he didn't initiate it. She did. So what needs to happen? This is red. They need to stop. It's not legal. Julie's under the influence. She never asked for consent, and she was making the decisions. There needs to be more conversations happening in this scenario. I believe this is the last one. Thanks for hanging on. Blake and Sarah have been dating for the past year. They decided recently that they were both ready to have sex. They've had sex a few times now. One night, the couple were hanging out, and they started to make out. Blake started to unbutton their pants and whispered into Sarah's ear, "Are you ready?" Sarah wasn't sure about having sex that night and said, "I don't really want to have sex. Can we just keep making out?" Blake stopped and said, "What are you talking about? It's not like it's the first time. We've already done it." Sarah doesn't say anything. Blake says that they've already started hooking up, so they might as well just have sex. Red, yellow, or green? This is a red situation, and here's why. She said, "I don't want to have sex. Can we just keep making out?" So is consent given for intercourse? No, because she said, "I don't want to have sex." he was saying, what are you talking about? It's not like it's the first time. In this situation, he is pressuring her, which is not okay. It doesn't matter if you've done it 100 times before. They have the right at any moment to decide not to engage in intercourse. So what should happen next? They can continue making out because she has said she's fine with that. However, the sex is not consensual. If he continues to pressure her, Sarah needs to leave the situation. So you can see based on those scenarios there, you can understand what to do in all of these situations. So just to wrap up here, I want to talk about what sex is like. It's kind of like consent. Giving consent is like getting a tattoo. You go to the tattoo parlor and you have a consultation. You're saying, okay, this is what I want. Then you put on the stencil. So you're doing foreplay, whatever. Then you put on the stencil. You're getting ready for the action to occur. So you sit in the chair and you're in the middle of getting tattooed, right? So they're sitting there, they're doing the lines. And in the middle of it, you start to feel uneasy and you're like, I don't really want this anymore. At any point in the process, you can choose to stop getting that tattoo. Is that frustrating for the tattoo artist because they went through all the work to have the consultation, put on the stencil, they're already in the action? Is that frustrating? Yes, it is, but does that matter? No, because it's your body, it's your choice. Whatever you feel comfortable with is what should be allowed. There is this video, I'm not going to play it because I'm already 21 minutes in. It just talks about how consent is like tea. It is important, no matter what type of situation you're in, that you're always asking for verbal consent and making sure that it's what the other person wants. If you stuck around through this whole video, thank you so much. I think this is a very important topic that people should understand. Sorry that it took a while, but I find the scenarios to be helpful. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have had a snow day and we would have done it in person. So if you have any questions about this or you're feeling uncomfortable or there's something you want to talk about, reach out to me and I'd be happy to speak with you. Have a great day.